Denver Bronco Roundup with special guests. Stay tuned. Well, good evening, Denver Broncos fans. It's Tuesday, 7 p.m. It's the DBR. Man, and you might notice a little bit dressed up. It's not a draft show. I got dressed up for special guest. Special guest, Mr. Lance Sanderson of the Mile High Huddle Deep Valley Dove Divers. Deep Valley Dove Divers? Yes, I think that's right. Anyway, Lance, welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Doing all right, Keith. It's always a pleasure to join you guys. Dove Valley Deep Divers.
Dove Valley Deep Divers. I was all over that, man. I'm sorry.
You're good, man.
Say that 5 times fast.
I have to do it every week, so I don't want to have to do it 5 times fast. All right, it's a mouthful. It's a mouthful, but it's always a pleasure to join you guys. Thank you for having me, and can't wait to chat some Broncos with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeudy, welcome to the show. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Just got done with T-ball practice. Ready to chat it up Bronco style.
Heck yeah. And the Dutchie, sir, coming in from good old Missouri. How are we doing, sir?
Very good. It's warm and hot in here. We had a tornado last Saturday coming by at about 3 miles from our home.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah, very exciting weather circumstances here.
Yeah, I hope to shout, man. That's an exciting week to try to put together and put in the past and get all wrapped up for Denver Broncos. Sirens going off on the whole 9 yards, then, Dutchie?
Absolutely. Hailstones the size of baseballs, and the whole shebang.
Wow, man. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're safe. Hopefully, everyone's all right, man.
Oh yeah. Fortunately, we were in Kansas City,
okay.
but the rest of our family was in the home, and the home that we have is pretty good sheltered for storms like that.
Very good, man. Any insurance claims out of the whole thing, and then we can move on.
No, none.
And they don't. That's good, man. No car, no home. That's not bad, man. Well, guys, I'm really excited. Obviously, like I said, we were talking a little bit before the show, and man, we don't get to see Lance when we're doing coverage, and he doesn't get to see us. We did a ton of draft coverage ourselves. I looked it up. I believe if I'm correct here, correct me if I'm wrong. 15 hours, 18 minutes, 47 seconds. Lance put in quite the stretch when it came to covering the Denver Broncos and the draft. And I just want to add this too. I looked this up. From what I saw, 27 draft articles that you put out, and 220 players you evaluated, and 183 of them got grades from you. You did your research, buddy. You were all set to go, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun this year. It's the most I've ever done. I wanted to try to shine a little bit more with the prospect reports and everything like that. We did, I believe it was 437 total players across 125 different total articles that Eric Trickle and I were able to do just between the two of us on milehighhuddle.com. So if you guys got any questions on any prospect, anything you want to know, all you got to do is just search their name and Mile High Huddle on Google. It'll take you right to that prospect. You find their entire report. Everything is all good to go. It was a lot of fun. My goal was to get to 200 total graded players this year. I got 220 players that I evaluated. and didn't get finalized grades on all of them. So I fell short of my goal, but it was fulfilling to be able to do that much work and just finally understand the draft a little bit more and just the full details that everybody does in terms of like the national guys that do like 300 players, or like Eric, who I think he had 540 some odd players that he had full grades on. It's just an insane amount of work, but to be able to get just a taste of that, and maybe next year I'm going to shoot for more. I'm really going to try to get that 200. If I can get to 225, I'll be really happy with myself. So it was a lot of fun.
Right on, man. Yeah, man, that's a lot of work. We try to do as much as we possibly can over here, and just hats off to you, man. Like I said, that's a ton of work, man, and really appreciate what you guys do over there. You and Eric both on Dove Valley Deep Divers. See, got it. Michelle's coming in and saying, "Hey, Lance, great to see you rocking the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Got the ball cap up there, buddy. So already got a fan over there with Michelle. Just real quick before we jump into the meat of the show, guys. Get rid of my comment here real quick, but we are brought to you by Rocky Mountain Sports Network. Go check them out. Facebook.com groups Rocky Mountain Sports Network. That's Facebook.com/group/ Rocky Mountain Sports Network. Ton of stuff going on over there. Also, Willow Seasonings and Blends. That's our sponsor. And go check out willowseasonings.com. We'll talk a little bit more about that promo code later, but that DBR 2023 gets you 15% off your order. Go over to willowseasonings.com and spice up your life. Well, gentlemen, one of the things that we really wanted to get to right off the bat, obviously there's been releases and there has been some additions to this roster. And we just want to kind of go over, I know that, Dutchie, this was something that you were wanting to talk about, some of the releases that we had from this Denver Bronco roster, and what maybe holes that made on our roster, what holes maybe we filled as well. Where do you want to go first, Dutchie? What was a loss that you saw come off of our roster as releases and gentlemen not being invited back have happened as far as the Denver Broncos roster is concerned?
I think one of the one of agents that of players that left, that was a loss for me. That was a couple of years ago, and that was Andy Yanovich. And he would have been tremendous in the new in the new system. Beck has gone. He would have fulfilled a good role in here. I think that is a bit of a loss. And now we lost an offensive tackle in Fleming, even although he was not the greatest, but he would have been depth for us. I think those are some of the players I didn't like to see gone.
Now, one thing I would say, for the first time in quite some time, we actually have a fullback in the fold. We went out and got Michael Burton from the Kansas City Chiefs. That will be interesting. Again, Andy Janovich certainly was one of those fullbacks from a couple of years ago. Beck tried to fill that hole. Tomlinson tried to fill that hole a little bit. But it'll be interesting to be lined up with a true fullback. Jeudy, losses off of this roster, what are you most concerned with?
True losses that you're not going to be able to get back, I would probably say Deshaun Williams off the defensive line was probably a big one for me.
Yeah, headed over to Carolina, if I remember correctly. So
my biggest one. Other than that, you still can, if you want Fleming back, you if you want Fleming back, you can still re-sign him.
Yep.
I don't think Latavius Murray was a huge loss because you can get when they were able to pick him up, you can find that type of running back late.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's probably my big one is Deshaun Williams. I mean, he was a starter last year, and that's probably the one area on this team that I think we probably lack a little depth. I mean, you're back to two second-year guys and Deshaun. I just had his
Deshaun Williams.
No, Jonathan Harris. I mean, so I mean, you're counting on two second-year guys and Jonathan Harris as your backups.
That's fair, man.
For me, that's the big one.
defensive line depth is something that has been a concern, was a concern through the draft, and maybe is still a concern as well today. Lance, I was a terrible host, and I'm making you go last. But what out of the losses that we saw off this roster, what is most concerning, especially if it created a hole within this roster?
Well, I want to go back to Cam Fleming really fast. That's one of the biggest losses this team has seen over the last couple of seasons. And like Jeudy said, you can still bring him back. There's an opportunity to bring him back as your swing tackle. And I think the Broncos need to make that a priority moving forward because out of every single right tackle this team has seen since Orlando Franklin left in 2015, I mean, we're talking Donald Stevenson, Menelik Watson, Jared Valdir was in there for a little bit as well, Elijah Wilkinson, DeMar Dotson. Cam Fleming was the best out of all. Go ahead.
James.
Yeah, Juwan James. Yep, Juwan James, who was an abject disaster and a failure of a signing, and that dude is should be committed with charged with grand larceny for the amount of money he stole from the Broncos. But Cam Fleming was easily the best right tackle this team has seen since Orlando Franklin. But he was at least competent. And to get a guy out there, and DeMar Dotson, let's give some credit to DeMar Dotson, being placed in a scheme that didn't fit his skill set in terms of his movement ability and having him out in front and screens and running outside zone and stuff like that. They did him a disservice. He was at least okay, but Cam Fleming is the guy. He can play left side. He can play the right side. You got to bring him back. Another one that I'm curious to see how the rest of the summer goes in terms of bringing him back for some depth along the interior of the offensive line is Dalton Reisner. And I know that there's a certain sense of fan appreciation for Dalton Reisner growing up in Morgan, Colorado, or whatever the place is called.
Yep.
And he grew up as a Broncos fan. And he may have not have been the greatest player at the guard position, but he's at least competent. And right now, you don't have anybody along the interior besides Ben Powers and Quinn Miners that can step in and be, a solidifying force along the interior of the offensive line. So I would like to see both of those players brought back. Shout out to Andy Janovich for Albert here. Yes, I think the fullback, but Michael Burton, and then they brought in Adam Troutman as well that can kind of play that H-back role. So I think they filled that need just a little bit. But yeah, Fleming and Reisner are the two that are the ones that I'm really curious to see what direction the Broncos go in here moving forward.
Dreamweaver giving me a little bit of love here, saying those shades are fire. Appreciate it, Dreamweaver. Appreciate you jumping in here as well. Michael Ronquillo jumping in saying, good evening, Keith, Jeudy, Albert, and Lance. Let's go Broncos. And let's go is right, man. A lot of exciting things that are happening. I just wanted to run down the list. I might have to lift the shade just for a second so I can see it the best. These were our total exits. We had Graham Glasgow headed off to Detroit, Chase Edmonds to Tampa Bay, Draymond Jones to Seattle, obviously, Calvin Anderson in New England, Deshaun Williams over to Carolina, Latavius Murray, obviously we all probably know, went to Buffalo, and just recently Brett Rippon over to the Rams. So I would say, you start to balance this with the other side of what we brought in the door, and it starts to feel a little bit better because if you're in love with a few of those names, a few people are saying Chase Edmonds is obviously a guy that we thought we could maybe bring back because of the need at running back. Obviously, he's in Tampa Bay now. Obviously, Draymond Jones was a guy that filled that interior position, a place that even Jeudy was talking about needing some depth, as well as Deshaun Williams leaving. And like I mentioned, Latavius Murray as well. But bringing in the door, Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, Zach Allen, Samaje Perine, Chris Manhertz, and Michael Burton. How do you stack up the losses versus the gains, Lance? How do you feel? Did we make out? Are we on the plus side? Are we on the negative side? Are we moving in the right direction?
But quickly, I want to just touch on Draymond Jones because that was probably the biggest loss, if we're being honest, the biggest loss in terms of opening up a huge hole on the defensive line. And while Deshaun Williams was a great player, don't get me wrong, especially is that 3 technique, a guy that can slide inside and play the nose. Draymond Jones, with his ability, especially as a run defender, where he's getting better, bringing some heat after the pass rusher. This dude was an amazing player. But nevertheless, in terms of the additions that the Broncos made going against the subtractions that the Broncos lost. I think, quite honestly, the Broncos are kind of at a net positive here, specifically because of the offensive line. Bringing in Ben Powers, bringing in Mike McGlinchey, and going and getting another guy in Kyle Fuller who has some familiarity with Russell Wilson as a center back in Seattle there for a couple of seasons. I mean, you've done a lot to rebuild this offensive line. You still got to work on some depth pieces, but just bringing it, and then also bringing in Chris Manhurst, a blocking tight end, a guy that you can line up at that Y position and just have him out on the front side of run plays and go out there and just be dominant in the running game, which is where I think this Broncos team is moving forward. I think, quite honestly, while the losses of what they have so far, there's a lot of fan favorites that have gone out, but you're going to get new fan favorites because this team is going to get better moving forward. And they did get better moving forward a couple of weekends ago. So that's what I think.
I agree, man. I agree. But Albert, what are your thoughts, man? How do you feel about the losses versus the gains? Are we net positive, as Lance kind of eloquently put it?
I definitely think that we have improved, especially in the O-line with those new additions, and I think more additions will come in the free agency and probably after June 1st, because that would be for most of the team the cheapest way to do it, and we might lose a player or two because of that. But yeah, overall, I think we have improved a lot, and with the new system that we're probably going to play, I think we will see a big change on our offense.
Jeudy, man, over to you, man. Bring us home, buddy, on this one.
I definitely think it's a net positive. Massive upgrades at left guard. Probably got a top 5 run blocker and Ben Powers, and a very underrated pass blocker as well. And probably got the best right tackle that was on the market. Yeah, you probably overspent, but that's what we had rich owners for, because we knew that they had deep pockets. And yes, Draymond Jones was a loss, but I think you improve with Zach Allen. If nothing more than he's much better in the run game than Draymond Jones.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, the one thing that does scare me with Zach Allen is it was a contract year and he put up big numbers. Was that because it was a contract year, or do you take J.J. Watt's word that this guy is a beast and he's just going to continue to get better?
Yeah.
I'll go back around the horn, guys. Oh, go ahead, Lance.
I just want to throw in one other addition and subtraction here that makes me believe that this Broncos team is moving in the right direction. Let's not forget about the coaching staff. Moving on from Nathaniel Hackett, who was an abject disaster as a head coach, and getting Sean Payton, while you gave up draft capital to do so, you brought in a top, 6 or 7 at least, and he's probably not 6 or 7 on that list, head coach in the NFL to date. So you bring in a guy like him, a guy that's going to be a stabilizing force, rebuild the culture of this team, rebuild this offensive identity, move this team forward in the positive direction, while also moving on from one of the worst head coaching debuts we've ever seen in our entire existence here on this planet and the entire 75 or 80-year history of NFL football. That, to me, also leads me to believe that the Broncos won this offseason in terms of finding the right direction and moving forward.
That is a great point, Lance. Can't overlook the coaching staff changes. It's monumental, really, if you look at the swing that we're talking about in those additions to the losses, I guess you could say, if you even want to call it as such.
And getting owners finally, and owners with deep pockets.
Well, owners with stability, even. Owners with stability is so much for the organization, for the players, for the coaches that want to come in here. They want to have that stability. We had none of that. It's there now. But I want to say really quick, a quick hello to Mr. Kurt Valente real quick. So he's coming in here and saying, "What's up, boys?" And if you know Kurt, that's an emphatic "What's up, boys?" So good to see you, Kurt. I also want to jump over to Dreamweaver and maybe go back around the horn, starting with Jeudy, and we'll say, what does everyone think we will get for a vet running back addition? Jeudy, are we adding one?
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, if you're going to be what everyone's saying, a run first team, and you've invested all this stuff, you cannot be content with Samaje Perine, who's never been a starting running back, Tony Jones Jr., who is probably only here for special teams, and a hurt Javonte Williams. What route they go, I don't know. The longer waits. I mean, I'm probably not the biggest fan, but the guy is still a decent running back. Zeke. Does Dalvin Cook get cut post June 1? Do they go get Kareem Hunt? I'm not a big fan of his off-field stuff, but all reports from when he's left Cleveland and now he's cleaned stuff up. So there's guys out there but you're gonna have to make a move. You can't be content with your RB2 as Tony Jones Jr.
Yeah, Tony Jones Jr. recent addition again from the Seahawks,
and that's coming from a huge Notre Dame fan. So
exactly, man. Albert, go over to you, and then we'll round out with Lance on this. But what do you think? Adding a veteran presence, and if so, do you have any names that you have on the tip of your tongue?
Yeah, I definitely be needing another running back, and maybe another, if we can get it, or maybe even 2 vets. Why not? If we can get it for the right price, it wouldn't hurt us. Because if you're going to be run heavy, you want to be having those players rotate and keep them fresh, because it's going to be difficult. Yeah, even although Kareem Hunt had some garbage, but I think that is resolved. Otherwise, he wouldn't be playing. Yeah, let's get him because you probably can pick him up for dollars on the penny right now, and he can do it all. He can catch. He can and be a blocker. He can do it. So yeah, why not?
Yeah.
There are some others probably available, but Kareem is one of my favorites on the list.
All right, man. Rounding it out is a guy who actually just got done writing an article and posted up today. 3 free agents to fill Broncos' lingering roster holes, of one of which was running back. So, Lance, who is your solution, and is there any others than the one you listed in your article? By the way, head over to sportsillustrated.com, look up Lance's name, and you can just read all his articles, including this one. So
Yeah, it's milehighhuddle.com. It's the very first article, I believe, up there. At least it was before I came on the show. The three free agents to fill those lingering roster holes. The last player I highlighted in the article was not Kareem Hunt, who I would be on board with if the Broncos were able to go and get him, because like Albert said, he's a great running back. He's a great receiver out of the backfield. He's a great pass protection. Scheme versatile, is very patient as a runner. The problem is he's slowing down a little bit. And the guy that I listed in my article was former Miami Dolphins running back, former Baltimore Ravens running back, Kenyon Drake. He was drafted by Vance Joseph, so there's a natural connection there. In terms of having, like, they may not be the most familiar with each other because, Vance Joseph at the time, he was the head coach, also a defensive guy. So maybe they weren't like crossing paths all the time, but they still have a connection there. He had over 100 carries for Baltimore this last season with 4.4 yards per carry, 482 yards. Also added 17 receptions for 89 yards. So he's got he's on the downside of his career. I believe he's pushing 30. So that's going to be kind of a qualifier for if the Broncos want to bring him in. Bringing in a 30-year-old running back is not necessarily the most tasteful move that you can get. But with that age also comes the fact that he's going to be cheap. You're going to get him on a veteran minimum deal, similarly to what the Broncos got with Latavius Murray this last season. Yep. He's also going to bring you a lot of experience. He's a quality pass protector as well, coming out of the backfield. And also something that he does really well is he creates explosive plays with his legs. He has 96 career carries rushing the football that have gone for 10 plus yards. So he's got that ability to take the top off of the defense running out of the backfield. So that's a guy that I would like because you can get him at a valuable deal. He's not going to demand the rock right off the bat. He can be a placeholder for until Javonte Williams comes back, and he's not going to have while those off-field concerns with Kareem Hunt have pretty much been rectified to this point, you still don't have that stigma of a player coming in at a devalued position at an elevated age. So Kenyon Drake is the one that I would bring in there. Guys, go check out the article. I put all that stuff in there. I have also named a center in Chase Roulier from Washington. And then Marcus Golden, another player familiar with Vance Joseph as an edge rusher from Arizona. So go check that out if you guys get the opportunity to. I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, great article over there, buddy, and some great options. Maybe not the ones that necessarily came to the top of the mind. Obviously, as we hit the chat today, Kenyon Drake wasn't the number one name that was coming to everyone's mind, whether it be us or in the chat. Got some good pickups and some good information on the guys over there. Go check out that article. It's a great one. Wanted to jump over to Kenny because we were talking a little bit right before we got on. I'm sorry, it was Kenny. I'm sorry, Kurt. Kenny and Kurt are over at the K&K show. Sometimes I get them a little bit mixed up. But we were talking before the show, and Jeudy has been really, really, really high on Mr. Russell Wilson. And not to be outdone was Mr. Kurt Valente, because he comes in here and he says, everyone who badmouthed Russ is going to eat their words. I hope those that badmouth Russ aren't rocking that number 3 jersey this year. I know Jeudy and I will be rocking the Russ jersey. Jeudy, you'll be rocking it, right, buddy?
Oh, I just think Russ is going to have a bounce. He's got himself into shape. He's using all this media and stuff to fuel the fire and, push him. I mean, he literally is getting ripped for being the first one at OTAs. I mean, the media, they are now just looking to, and he's just going to use this as fuel for the fire. I know he didn't play his best ball last year, but that definitely was not all on him. From not being in shape to, that's on him, but he did put the weight on to stand in the pocket. We've seen it for probably 2 years now. It's not working. Sean Payton is going to be smart enough to put Russ in positions that are going to work. He's not going to force him to be Drew Brees. He's going to do things that work for us. And I think they have a lot of confidence in him. They did not address quarterback at all. All the rumors were drafting a quarterback, and they didn't draft one. So it's Russ's team this year, and if he wants to see more of that big contract, he needs to perform this year, and I fully expect he will.
Yeah, it'll be big changes. I just like I said, I wanted to put it out there. You and Kurt certainly can stand your ground if Russ is performing at the end of this season like you guys are expecting him to. There are a lot of doubters out there, and we all know that when it comes to the national media, it's brutal when it comes to Russell Wilson. So I understand you guys, Kurt included, and thanks, Kurt, for coming in and joining the show. But I appreciate you feeling that way, man. It's tough to stand behind a guy that had a rough season like he did last year. It's tough to see the vision sometimes and see what could possibly be, even with an aging or older quarterback like he is. But I like what you guys are doing. I don't know if I'm as strong, but I'm certainly behind the Broncos, this being the Denver Bronco Roundup.
See, there's some narratives I don't understand. He's an aging quarterback, but no one says Aaron Rodgers is going to be 40.
Oh, I think he's an aging quarterback too.
No one. You don't hear that like you hear it about Russ.
I think
he's injury prone. The dude had one freak hand injury, and if it wasn't for bad old line play and some other things, he probably wouldn't have been hurt last year. Between the weight and different things that he is now. If you've seen pictures and stuff, he's lost the weight. He's put the work in.
Yeah, we hope that's. I'll be honest. This is the big thing, and we kind of talked about this off air one day. With the media lockout that we have right now, there's very little to go off of. We do have some social media that we can maybe hope is showing us everything that we're looking at. We all know that photography can lie one way or the other sometimes too. But yes, he does look like he's in better condition. It'll be really interesting once we get to actually get contact with these players and see them come out and hit the podium and get to be able to talk to them. I do have faith like you, Jeudy, but again, maybe just more limited expectations. I know that you're super, super high on him. I think for the most part, I shouldn't say for the most part, I think that Sean Payton is going to try to take the ball out of Wilson's hands and try to make this more of a running team. I don't think you'll see gaudy numbers, but I think you'll see a winning culture start to develop here for the Mile High.
When I threw my numbers out, in 17 games, if he throws for 4,000 yards, that's only 234 yards a game. That's his career average. With a couple touchdowns, he doesn't need had to have gaudy numbers. He needs to be efficient. He needs to keep drives going. He not 60% comp. He needs like 65, 66 comp, maybe better.
Yeah.
And I look at things like, I mean, I always knew Drew Brees was good, but till I went back and looked at his stats, I didn't realize that he was a 70% comp guy most of his time in New Orleans. I mean, that is really incredible. I mean, you don't see a lot of quarterbacks in the 70s in multiple years.
No.
And I think he can do that with Russ. It's going to – no one last year was coaching him, get the ball out of your hands. This is read 1, read 2. It was – he kind of got the keys to run everything, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And he's admitted that, and he's admitted I need coaching.
Yep. I think it'll be a culture. It'll be a little bit of, I was going to say it's going to be a shock, but from the very beginning, Russell Wilson said, I wanted to be coached hard, and I think he's going to get it. And I think this will be a completely different outcome from what we saw last year. I think we'll see some true validity in that quarterback position, and just some good quality production.
And look at the last two games. And I just used the last two games. I mean, with a different coach. I mean, you've seen much better play from Russ. Now, Matt will sit and tell you that was because of a new coach and you get a hype from that. I don't think that's what it was. It was this coach forced Russ to run, which he finally did. We've seen a lot more rollouts, which that's what Russ does, and you've seen what it produced.
Go ahead, Lance.
I want to add on to that, Jeudy, because you bring a very salient point to that conversation here. It's it's not necessarily the play design, because when you watched what Nathaniel Hackett was doing, if you threw on the all-22 tape and watched what he was doing in terms of his design, there were receivers that were open all the time. It was Russ was either moving on to his next progression and not letting a guy clear into the second window of the zone coverage where he's wide open, standing there. Like go back to the Week 4 game against Indianapolis, the last play of the game where Russell Wilson throws an interception to end the game. KJ Hamler is running on a pick route and he's wide open, wide open. Like Nathaniel Hackett had the scheme dialed up the right way. What you didn't see was the sequencing. The sequencing of play calling is such a very finite and very, I don't know the word here, in-depth kind of operation. Like you have to have a lot of tact in what you're doing here. You have to understand what this play does to develop this play, and then what that play does to develop this next play, and how you can create an offense based on your very first play call and understanding. That's why, Mike Shanahan was so good on the script. Everyone says his first 15 play calls was the most unstoppable offense anybody has ever seen, because he understand we run outside zone on this first play, then we're going to bootleg off the other side, then we're going to run it back again, bootleg around the other way, and then instead of doing a bootleg, we're going to do a motion drop off of the outside zone, plant your back foot. The backside post is now wide open because the safety decides he's going to peel back around and try to get underneath on the crossing route. The backside post, Rod Smith, wide open, touchdown, Super Bowl 33. Everybody knows the play. That's how that whole sequence went down. When the last two games, Russell Wilson was playing so much better is because Justin Outen actually showed the ability to sequence his play calls and develop his scheme to open up certain designs and then bring everything full circle. That option play that we never saw run the entire season, I believe it was the Kansas City game where Russell Wilson runs a sprint option to the left-hand side, untouched for a 22-yard touchdown run. That was a beautiful, beautiful play call and a beautiful design, and it was also schematically sequenced perfectly to allow that play to develop and work the way that it was supposed to. So that is something in Jeudy, and I know that's a long way of saying that, but Jeudy, you're absolutely correct there. The sequencing in the play calling should be able to help Russell Wilson moving forward, because what does Sean Payton do very well? He sequences his play calls. He's up there with Andy Reid in terms of developing developing and creating great designs, sequencing them together to make them all build off of each other, which creates a hyper explosive offense. If Russell Wilson can just be efficient, hit the reads that he needs to make, it's going to make this offense so amazing. I tell you, like, Russell Wilson is a perfect quarterback to run the Sean Payton offense that Drew Brees was running back in like 2007.
Gentlemen,
one thing for me too that I really hope Sean Payton coaches out of him is he's got to coach out it's okay to take a 5-yard or 8-yard pass play, and you could see that a lot. Russ was passing up open routes to try to hit a home run play every time. You don't need that every time, and you could see that last year. It's like he's seen that guy open. I'll pass that up for a 5-yard or 6-yard pass to try to throw a home run pass that wasn't working. And I really hope that Sean Payton can coach that out of him.
I think you got the right guy to do it, buddy. 100%. So I do want to, Lance, I don't know how often you get to see our show. I know that you've been great to jump in here and be part of the conversation from time to time. But one thing that we have, and I'll be honest, it's been under top secret wraps all week long. We have a little segment that we like to do. It's called Nopper's Knowledge. And Albert would not let this out of the bag all week, not even to me, not to Jeudy. He's got something special brewed up. So without further ado, Albert, I'm going to get you the big screen here, buddy.
Okay.
You've been keeping us in suspense all week, man. I was trying to pry it out of you in a few different ways in the chat, but you got a top secret Nopper's Knowledge for us this week. Something completely different, so drop us your knowledge and drop us what's going on with Nopper's Knowledge this week.
So this might be an easy one or a very difficult one. This guy is 22 years old.
Gotta keep going, brother, man. 22 years old. Okay. Oh, so just to know so the same premise is the same. This is a gentleman who's currently on the Denver Broncos roster. You said you had a surprise, so I didn't know if we were doing something completely different. So a 22-year-old, he's a player on the Denver Broncos roster?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
Keep
it going.
He's 323 pounds.
Is it Ioma Owazurike?
Nope.
Ooh.
All right.
He only has played football for 5 years.
It's Quinn Miners.
Nope.
Wow, okay.
Keep it going, man. We got the man of the hour here. He should know everybody on the roster here, so keep it going.
One of his quotes was, "It was a dream come true."
Is it? No, Troutman's too older. I know that.
He's not 323 pounds.
That's also true.
Can't be. Is it?
You all had to look up the name. We just brought in a international player.
Yep. Hauga.
Haggai Sisam Debuisi.
Yes. Yep.
That's it.
That is it.
Ding 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 ding
Yeah,
ding 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 ding.
No, this one.
So, I kind of feel ashamed of myself because knowing that Quinn Miners was actually at the Senior Bowl, so that was a really bad guess. I was like 323 pounds only to play. Oh, it's got to be Quinn Miners. That's a good one.
It was a fantastic one, buddy. I appreciate you, and we'll just. Albert Knoppers dropping the knowledge. The real knowledge is, I'm not going to say it. So say the name again, Albert. Albert's like our pronunciation expert here. So
Haggai Sisam Debuisi.
And 323 pounds, defensive lineman, if I remember right.
And he played. He also was invited with the Cardinals. Let me check it up. I think he played for the Cardinals for a little bit, and where he was an offensive lineman. He is originally from Nigeria, and he got invited by a program founded by a former NFL player, Osi Umenyiora, who played as a pro player.
Mm-hmm.
And he was discovered in Africa to be a talent. So he got invited to an event in London, and that's where he got picked up to get trained to be an NFL football player. Do you know how he discovered football? YouTube.
YouTube?
Yep, he discovered football and started playing football because of YouTube. And I think
Wow.
this is such a great program, and this shows that the NFL, I don't think, just want to stay in the United States. I think they want to spread out, and who knows, maybe we will have a World Cup, a real World Cup someday in the NFL. And I think this is a start of the program, and that's why I wanted to put this in there.
Oh, I think there'll be a team in London in the next 10 years.
Yeah, they're already in several teams in Europe. Amsterdam has a team. In Germany, there is one or two teams, I believe. It's becoming more and more popular over there. But yeah, it's not even close to what soccer is. And maybe we are 10 years still away from it. But I hope that something like this will happen in the near future.
Yeah, UC and Yora down there, he's been doing a fantastic. I watched a little bit of a documentary on him and everything that he does and the players that he brings down there, and really just not only helping out the communities down there, but really helping out these individuals and finding these guys who, I'll tell you what, when I saw them down there training, trying to get picked to go to that London event, man, I've never seen harder workers on the field than those guys trying to make it and trying to, obviously that was a huge change in their world if they can get out of their current predicament and into the NFL. That's night and day difference. So those guys are literally out there fighting for their lives in a lot of ways, and it's amazing. These guys, literally the stories of eating one meal a day, but yet they're out there on the football field giving it their all. I'm glad that the NFL has brought about this program. Hopefully it helps with the expansion of the product, but more importantly, hopefully it helps out some of these people all around the world as talent is brought into the NFL at the same time.
So, do you mind if I answer a question from Kenny?
Yeah, certainly.
In chat. He says, good evening, Dutchie. Alexander Madison wants to know why his name hasn't been mentioned yet on Napas Knowledge. He is not on the Broncos roster. That's why.
And Kenny says he loves busting your chops, Dutchie. Great job as always. And that was a great segment, buddy. That was a good one, and had a great story behind it. So I really like that. Gentlemen, we talked about it a little bit earlier. We are sponsored by Willow Seasonings, Willow Seasonings and Blends. We have a fantastic promotion going on there right now. If you head over to willowseasonings.com, they have all their spices, all their sauces, award-winning, blue ribbon winners. This guy is a veteran. He's a Denver Bronco fan. He's a Colorado native. And not only that, he's one of the most generous guys I know. Right now, not only is he giving every single one of you that go over there, place an order, put DBR 2023 in there, and you'll get 15% off. That's 15% off. That's like his biggest sale that he typically runs throughout the entire year. And he's running this for the rest of the season for us. The rest of the NFL season, I guess is the best way to put it. The rest of the year, he's doing this for us. On top of that, we had a great Rocky Mountain Sports Network fan who passed away. His name was Zach Flavella. And unfortunately, when he passed, he left a wife with 2 kids. And his wife had just found out that she was pregnant with twins as well. So on top of all the great things that we're doing with 15% off when you type in that DBR 2023 at willowseasonings.com, every time you make one of those purchases and put that code in, he's also giving $1 to their GoFundMe page, guys. So go check him out, willowseasonings.com. Fantastic sponsor. Like I said, Colorado native, veteran-owned business. Yeah, clap it up. Feel good. Denver Bronco fan and one heck of a guy, David Slade over at WillowSeasonings.com. WillowSeasonings.com, DBR 2023. Well, gentlemen, on to our next subject. A couple of things that Jeudy pointed out that we missed, so we kind of want to wrap this up into kind of one little subject line. One thing we missed from last week, one thing that's a little bit new. Jerry Jeudy goes out and he gets his 5th-year option on his contract. Fifth year option on his contract. Yeah, that's exactly right. And Kareem Jackson is brought back for 1 year. Now, Jerry Jeudy gets that 5th-year option at $12.98 million that he'll be paid in 2024. Of course, Kareem Jackson, we don't have the exact details, or at least I didn't see it, but expected to be quite a bit lower contract. That being said, which was more surprising to you guys? And I'll start off with Lance. He's our guest here. Was it more surprising that Jerry Jeudy got his 5th-year option, or was it paying basically $13 million, or Kareem Jackson coming back on a 1-year deal for next year?
Honestly, it was Kareem Jackson coming back on a 1-year deal, and I have details here on that. This is from Denver Broncos 9 News insider Mike Kliss. It's a 1-year deal for $2.667 million for Kareem Jackson as the Broncos maxed out their 4-year qualifying offer. It's a deal that goes to vets who had 4 consecutive years with one team. The Broncos also get $1.35 million in cap relief. Nick Corti, who works with overthecap.com, who does a lot of their the compensatory picks for the NFL draft. He also does a lot of work with the collective bargaining agreement and understanding that and trying to relay what all that means. What he said, I'm going to quote him from his Twitter account at Nick Corti, if you guys want to see this as well. He says, "I did not even consider the 4-year qualifying offer since it's such a rare contract to be able to hand out. But this is also a strong additional reason to bring Kareem Jackson back on these grounds. $2.6675 million is the absolute maximum that the Broncos could have offered Kareem Jackson on a 4-year qualifying contract. Might as well make it a thread to explain why. So a 4-year qualifying contract starts off as a veteran salary benefit contract with compensation of a minimum salary. So $1.165 million for Kareem Jackson in 2023, plus a signing bonus of no more than $167,500 in 2023. Then to make it a 4-year qualifying contract, an additional maximum of $1.35 million is added to the contract to come up with the 2.66 and change that was reported. He finalizes it out by saying initially that he thought the Broncos could use the 4-year qualifying contract on Dalton Risner, who's eligible for it due to running his whole 4-year contract as his rookie contract with the Broncos. But now that cannot happen. The Broncos have maxed out their entire $1.35 million limit to Kareem Jackson. So if they want to bring in Dalton Risner, they would have to do so on another separate contract. To me, that's a huge deal. I know that's a lot of numbers and a lot of jargon that everyone's not really quite going to understand there. But to me, what this says is the Broncos got back a veteran safety on a very small deal, and they also got $1.35 million in cap relief, which they desperately need right now.
That's the big thing for me, the cap relief.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Basically ends up netting us out pretty well overall when it comes to that contract. If you want to put that cap relief in with the overall dollar spent for Kareem Jackson, the question that I had and I don't know if either one I should go around the horn. Jeudy, more surprising for Jeudy or more surprising for Kareem Jackson for you?
Probably Kareem Jackson, but even that made sense to me because of the 4-year qualifying and the cap relief. That was the big thing. The only thing that I'm leery on is I hope that there's 2 safeties on this roster that I want to see play this year, and I hope. He played 99.8% of the snaps. I hope that that's not the case this year in Caden Stearns and PJ Locke. I hope they get some real playing time.
Yeah, you're jumping my next topic, but I appreciate it, man. That's exactly where we'll be going. Dutchie, which was more surprising to you? The Jeudy or the Kareem Jackson signing?
Neither of them, because if the news is right from Michael Ronquillo, the signing of a 4-year contract of the center Alex Forsyth, if that is true, then that would be the big surprise for me. Because does that mean Cushenberry is out in the next couple time? Because if you sign a center that you just drafted for a 4-year contract, you must have big plans for him. Otherwise, you don't do that.
So
I think that is. I'm happy for KJax. I hope it's going to be more for like a veteran role, a leader in the locker room, and that he is going to be a rotational player. That he may play be 20 or to 30% of the snaps at the most. I'm happy for him. And Jerry Jeudy, the 5th-year option, yeah, that was necessary because we need to see what he really can do with the new offense, and so keep him happy. But yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me is, if that is true of Alex Forsyth, that is for me the biggest surprise.
I saw that as well, but Lance looked like he wanted to jump in on that 4-year signing. Did you have some information, or do you just want to add your opinion on that, Lance? Oh, got you muted there, buddy.
Sorry, I was just trying to look it up to see what the actual what the number was on that.
Terms?
Yeah, what the terms were. But so according to the rookie wage scale, every rookie contract of every drafted player is a 4-year deal, except for first-round picks where you have that 5th-year option. So his 4-year deal is structured into the NFL collective bargaining agreement. That's why you see him get that 4-year contract. While I don't disagree with you, I do think that Lloyd Cushenberry is potentially on his way out. This is the last year of his 4-year rookie contract that he signed as a 3rd-round pick. So with the additions of Kyle Fuller, with Alex Forsyth being brought in, and then the Broncos also have Luke Wattenberg on the roster as well, who was a 5th-round pick, I believe, or 6th-round pick, one of the two from last year. Cushenberry really has to show himself out, and that's why I'm going to plug my article again here. Chase Roulier, on my 3 free agents list of guys that can fill the lingering roster holes. Chase Roulier is a 7th-year player. He's coming off of major injury concerns, so you're going to get him at a cheaper deal. But when he's healthy, he's a top 3 pass protecting center in the NFL. He played. I have my notes here. He played in 1,089 snaps in 2020. Only allowed 1 sack and 17 total pressures in that season. So you're going to be able to get a guy. He's 29. He'll turn 30 on August 23rd, I believe. So you can sign him to a 1-year prove-it deal. Add him in for some competition. And from everything that I know of Alex Forsyth, I did a little bit of work on him. He was one of the guys that I watched, but I didn't get a finalized grade on. If I would have been able to do a little bit more work on him, I probably would have had him as a 5th-round player. Very consistent, very strong, very technical. He's got great hand placement. He plays with good leverage. He moves really well. This is a guy that he may take a year. He's dealing with some injury concerns as well, which is why he probably fell in the draft process. But I know of several different people, including former offensive lineman for, I believe he was with Detroit for a long time, Jeff Schwartz. Everybody should know that name. Mitchell Schwartz's brother. Emery Hunt, who is a widely known and renowned draftnik guy, a very highly renowned draft expert, had him as the top center in this class if everything would have gone correctly in terms of his pre-draft workouts. I know Duke Manyweather, who runs O-Line Masterminds, is a huge fan of Alex Forsyth. I know Joe Marino, who is from the Draft Network. Now he's with the Locked Off NFL Scouting, I believe the podcast is what it's called. Everybody that I know that is like high up in terms of NFL scouting is really high on Alex Forsyth. And the fact that he fell to the 7th round was a shock to a lot of people in the NFL world. So that, while I understand it, like the 4-year contract might be a little bit shocking to everybody, it's slated that way. And there's a very good possibility, give him a year, he could be your starting center moving forward in the Sean Payton offense.
Interesting, man. obviously, Alex Forsyth being up here in Montana is a guy that we got to see a lot. We get to see a lot of Oregon football up here. A guy that I really liked as well. Didn't understand the slide. I don't know what it is. I really liked Cushenberry coming out, and I'm kind of really pulling for him. Obviously, if he comes out there and he has a great year, it's only good for our Denver Broncos. But I digress. We started talking about Jerry Jeudy. We started talking about Kareem Jackson. We did get a little bit off topic, but as I mentioned to Jeudy, and I wanted to wrap it back around real quick, we have some loaded rooms, and we'll have some decisions to make when it comes to now these wide receiver and safety rooms. If we look at our safety room, I'll just start going through P.J. Locke, Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns, Delari Turner-Yell, Kareem Jackson, J.L. Skinner, and maybe even a Riley Moss possibility of a sighting in there as well. How are we going to get these safeties, or who's going to make it on there? How are we going to get playing time? And how much did this really set back that safety room with the signing of Kareem Jackson? And Jeudy, since you kind of pointed on it at first, why don't you go off on this one?
I think JL Skinner probably starts on PUP, so that opens up one spot coming off the pec injury. And then I see 4 locks probably at Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns, PJ Locke. So there's 3, and then probably Kareem Jackson probably. I mean, he might get the safety for the Broncos in 15 that got cut really late.
TJ Ward?
The TJ Ward treatment, got cut late, really surprising. But I think he was brought here for veteran leadership, and he fills a role as who knows how long JL Skinner will be on PUP. I mean, I don't see him starting the season ready to go coming off that pec injury.
Very good. Albert, it's been a while since we heard from you. What are your thoughts on the safety room?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Jeudy. I think Turner-Yell, I would give him a shot as well, and have indeed K-Jax as more like a team leader in the locker room and more like a coach. But Turner-Yell, I think we should give him a little bit more of an option too, and then a rotational between Stearns and Locke in that position. I think that would be the best option for the Broncos, because we need to think of the future, and K-Jax can coach the new safeties to be better safeties, and I think that is what needs to happen.
Lance, we'll round it out with you. What do you think of the safety room, and how does this all shake out?
Well, I think that you're going to see a kind of a changing of the guard here. And I know that you just brought Kareem Jackson back, but Justin Simmons is going into a potential option out. And I have a lot of questions. Caden Stearns with his health, that hip injury was obviously a big thing. And as Jeudy said, you've got J.L. Skinner coming off of that torn pec that he suffered in the pre-draft process. Very well could potentially be on PUP. From what I hear, though, it sounds like he's going to be on track to start training camp, even if he may open up PUP, but he'll be at least ready for the start of the season. So maybe keep your eyes on that. But with Kareem Jackson, I think the big thing is you're bringing him in, obviously, for that veteran leadership, the role in the locker room. He's very well liked among most of the Broncos players from this last season. So also across the NFL, people speak very highly of Kareem Jackson. I think that the big player to watch here this year is PJ Locke. And I know that sounds crazy, but he played pretty well over the tail end of last season. Developed kind of nicely. There's some instinctual issues with him in coverage that you got to kind of work through, but at the same time, he's got some upside. He's definitely a good athlete. He was actually teammates with Caden Stearns at Texas, for anybody that wants to know anything like that. But with Skinner coming in, with Stearns potentially coming back from injury, with PJ Locke in the fold, you've got Justin Simmons, who could potentially be a valuable trade asset, a cap casualty moving forward if the Broncos need to really move on and start this rebuild. So I'm curious to see how everything lines up this season. I don't have a whole lot of great insight on that, but the big like neon sign blasting in my face is be prepared for a safety overhaul in 2024.
Wow. Yeah, Justin Simmons. It was funny. I just was listening to another podcast today, and they were talking. You know, a lot of people are saying Kareem Jackson, that veteran presence, that leadership that he brings. Justin Simmons is 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Justin
Exactly.
Simmons is at the, as you mentioned, in an option to maybe get out of his contract at the end of this year. It is time for Justin Simmons to be the leader. It's time for Justin Simmons to be the veteran on this roster, or especially in that safety slash DB room. It's kind of surprising that we still have to rely on a Kareem Jackson in order to bring that at this point. We do have some decisions to be made. That was, for me, that was the surprising part about bringing back a Kareem Jackson is, again, we saw his play fall off last year, and if we're only bringing him back for leadership, that speaks, I think, just massive amounts to what Justin Simmons maybe is on the field or is capable of on the field. I mean, outside of his play, we're talking about his leadership itself. So,
the one thing I want to interject in on that one is leadership on the field and off the field is two completely different things, and in the locker room. And I'm not trying to throw Justin Simmons under the bus by any stretch of saying this. What Justin Simmons, the person, is absolutely amazing human being. He's very religious, very very oriented in off the field stuff. He's great in with his Justin Simmons Foundation. He does great work and stuff like that, but that may not be what you need to have in the locker room. Like that's a different kind of beast entirely. Like Von Miller, like everyone says, Von Miller off the field is great. Von's vision is awesome, and he loves to do his chicken farming and stuff like that. On the field, Von wasn't necessarily a huge outspoken kind of a leader, and neither is Justin Simmons. Neither was Demaryius Thomas. May he rest in peace. Like off the field, Demaryius Thomas was great in what he did, helping the community and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
On the field is where you're seeing this Kareem Jackson thing inside the locker room, not out in front of everybody else. And like I said, this is no slight to Justin Simmons or any of those players that I just mentioned. But what you bring on the field and in the locker room, like an Al Wilson or a Ray Lewis, like guys like that, Ed Reed, guys that can bring and fire everybody up. That's what Kareem Jackson is. That's not the type of personality that Justin Simmons is, and they're completely
100%.
different roles. So that while I understand what you're saying, you're like, Justin Simmons should be that guy. He's never going to be that guy. He's not that type A personality. Kareem Jackson is that guy.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. It's just, I just wish it would translate a little bit more off the field to on the field for Justin Simmons. He's also, a big player rep, the whole 9 yards. So, it's big, I guess. Gentlemen, I'm going to flip over to the wide receiver room. I'll let Jeudy start off with this one as well. Obviously, we add the 5th-year option on Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Marvin Mims Jr., Marquez Callaway, KJ Hamler, Little Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, Kendall Hinton, Montrell Washington. That's a packed room. It's going to be really interesting to see exactly, when we've talked about it in the weeks kind of leading up to this, tight end's been a big influence on this roster. We expect it to be a very tight end centric offense, I guess you could say, a lot focused around that tight end a lot. So we know that room is going to have to be fairly big. We did bring in that fullback that helps, maybe our running back room being a little bit light at this point as well. How many guys do we keep on this roster as far as wide receivers, and who makes the cut and who doesn't, Jeudy?
Excuse me. I had 6, maybe 7, probably Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Marvin Mims Jr., that's 4. Marcus Callaway, 5. I think those are locks. If you don't late in the OTAs or something, trade Sutton or somebody. So that's 5. And then I think there's a battle between Jalen Virgil, Brandon Johnson, maybe a Kendall Hinton. I don't know what they do with Hamler now that he's coming off that pec injury. I mean, they really did draft his replacement.
100%.
I think the writing's on the wall for Montel Washington. I mean, Marvin Mims can do returning. So can Tremont Smith. So, I mean, yeah, I think 5 are locks right now, and then you got a battle between about 3 guys. And I throw Kendall Hinton in there because he probably will, for a slot guy, he's probably your second best slot receiver right on this roster right now. I mean, I'll put Marvin Mims up there high, but Kendall Hinton is durable, and he's probably was one of your most reliable guys.
Dutchie, over to you, sir. What do you think about this wide receiver room? How do you see it shaking out, buddy?
Well, I will see it this way, that Jeudy, of course, is a lock. Tim Patrick, he's good. He's ruled in to be playing full on again. He seemed healthy. Of course, Mims is in there. There might be a role for Hamler there. It might be. But I see a bigger role as a wide receiver coming from Dulcich and Patrick Sutton. After June 1st, he might get cut. Or whatever they need to do, because we are needing some other players. We are depth in wide receivers, so he might be a casualty because of that. And so I still believe that is going to happen, because they can save quite a bit after June 1st on the cap with letting Sutton go, and that opens up the pathway for some other need that we have.
Yeah, good point, man.
I have one thing to add on that. I think the back end, who fits the best in special teams, those guys are going to have to play special teams. And I think if you got 2 even wide receivers battling out for 5th, 6th, 7th, I think who plays better special teams is going to be a make or break. I mean, that's special teams is going to be important this year.
Mm-hmm.
It is. We're building around that, and you could tell even through our draft picks, special teams and their ability to play on special teams was huge. Michael Ronquillo saying his top 3 wide receivers: Jerry, Jeudy, Sutton, and Patrick, followed by Mims, Hamler, and Hinton. I was just bringing up actually had a little bit of a glitch there. Sorry, reloaded on me there, so I don't know if we're all the way back, but we're back. So. Lance Sanderson put out his 23 NFL draft, quote-unquote, my guys. Didn't have a whole lot that fell onto this Broncos roster, but you did have one, buddy. Marvin Mims Jr. was your my guy that I saw on there. He's added into this wide receiver room, but overall, you could talk a little bit about that Marvin Mims Jr. pick, as he's obviously filling into this wide receiver room, and who gets left out as well.
Well, one of the reasons why I liked what Marvin Mims brought to the NFL level was obviously the electrifying speed that he brings. Like, this dude is a 0 to 60 type of receiver. And he gets from 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds. Like, it's immediate acceleration. He's also a very good route runner, especially on double moves and especially working over the middle of the field. He tracks the ball well in the air. He has a my ball mentality for a guy that's 5'10", 188 pounds. With shorter arms. I think he's got like 32-inch arms. So he can still go up and go get the football, and he does very well in contested catch situations. The reason why I had him as my favorite pick, literally he's my favorite pick of this class, despite trading up for him, because he offers reliability. He offers that speed threat. He's never injured. He's always out there and ready to go. He's a hyper-competitive player, and he's going to immediately take over for KJ Hamler. And while I hate that for KJ Hamler, the dude was born with a hamstring injury. He's been hurt his entire life. Like, I know that's mean to say, but like it's the truth. He has a pectoral injury now coming into this season. He really needed, this is year 4 for him. This is last year of his contract. He needed to have this season for him to like finally shine. And the Broncos went out and directly drafted his replacement to fill his hole on the roster.
It moved up to do it.
Only Randy Gregory's allowed to miss half the season and get paid big money.
Exactly. Like, well,
we can only have one.
And like Albert said, you know, I question Cortland Sutton's future on this roster. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a cut. I don't think it's actually going to like happen like that. I think the Broncos are going to really try to find out what they have in Tim Patrick. He tore his ACL early in training camp this last year. He's cleared to play, but you never know, man. It's the second ACL that he's torn on that same knee. So it's twice he's had the same knee surgery on that knee. So like you got to find out what he is. But you have a guy that projects very well in that same role in Brandon Johnson. He played very well this last preseason. He was a practice squad guy. They brought him up. They had him play in the regular season last year. So that's a guy to kind of watch out for as like a tail end of the roster guy. But quite honestly, I think you're rolling into the season with Sutton, with Patrick, with Jeudy. Obviously, there's your top three. Sutton could potentially be a trade deadline candidate. I think that the Broncos, if they are not in contention, they could move on from him at the trade deadline and still have that post-June 1st designation, clear that salary cap for 2024, and then continue to keep on with Tim Patrick. Brandon Johnson then jumps up the fold there. Obviously, Marvin Mims is going to be a guy there. Montrell Washington, though, straight up put on notice, dude. Like, this dude is very, very clearly the guy that's going to be out of this wide receiver room. I think Kendall Hinton brings that glue guy mentality. He's a great teammate. He's willing to do everything that you need him to do. He can play in the slot. He has contested catch ability. He's always feisty, catches everything that is thrown his way. And let's be honest, dude, this dude goes out there and he works his ass off as a blocker. He'll put you on your ass and he'll make you know about it. And so does Marvin Mims too. So like, I also think that fits in with this mentality that Sean Payton wants to bring. They want to be physical. They want to get in your face and show that we are better than you. We are more dominant than you. And Marvin Mims brings that as a blocker as well. So I know I got kind of a little scatter shot there, but
no, you're good.
Let's go. Sutton, Jeudy, Patrick, Marvin Mims, Hamler if he's healthy. If he's not, Hamler's cut. Montrell Washington probably cut. You're going to get Marquez Callaway and probably Brandon Johnson or Jalen Virgil, and maybe you get both of those guys. So, and like you said, special teams, man. Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, they bring that special teams versatility. So,
So, what do you think of the idea of Dulcich becoming more of a wide receiver? Because he used to play wide receiver in college.
I like it. I really do. Yep. Yeah, he was a wide receiver in high school, went to Washington State as a wide receiver, then bulked up, added a whole bunch of weight. This kid had a glow up for sure. And then when he went to UCLA and Chip Kelly's offense, they split him out. They put him as an H-back. They split him out in the slot. They put him in out on the X, out on the outside, and they threw him the football. He's a big body, contested catch freak of an athlete. Definitely has great hands, is a good route runner as well. The big thing that I think with the concerns with him, with bringing in Manhurts and bringing in Adam Troutman, who both those guys are quality blockers. Dulcich, while I think that he can block, I think that he has the mentality to block. He's just got to work on that technique. So, Albert, I think you bring a salient point to this where Dulcich could potentially be that big slot receiver, which also then moves into Cortland Sutton potentially being on the outs towards the trade deadline. You know, like
because of one of those comments from Sean Payton. What do you do as with Dulcich as a tight end? We will see, and I think therein lies a big question. We will see. Is he going to be a tight end? Is he going to be that slot receiver? Or
one thing I'll say on him is Jimmy Graham was not the greatest blocker.
No.
So if Dulcich can be a Jimmy Graham, it's either one of two things: either improve your blocking, or you become such a great tight end like Jimmy Graham, where they overlook the blocking part of it.
So my thing, and I love that you brought this point, Jeudy. It's such a really good point. My thing with Dulcich and comparing him to Jimmy Graham is the fact that Jimmy Graham, while he wasn't a great blocker, at least he got his ass out there and he did it. He never showed the great technique. He never showed like the strength at the point of attack. He got out there and he actually did it. Julius Thomas, everyone wants to talk about Julius Thomas, this great move tight end that catches the football, and they compared him to Jimmy Graham. Julius Thomas had no interest in blocking. Greg Dulcich does, though. Like, he wants to be good as a blocker. You can see it when he puts on the tape.
Yep.
Put on the tape with him at UCLA. The dude goes after everybody. He wants to be a good blocker. So you can see that growth with him. And I think that if he does have a little bit more time to develop, he can actually turn into that F tight end where you have him lined up on the line of scrimmage, maybe split him off, throw him in the slot. You can actually trust him out there on the weak side of the blocking attack, but he's never going to be like a Chris Manhertz or a Rob Gronkowski where you say, you're on the front side of this, you wall off the edge and kick that guy's ass all the way out to the sideline. He's never going to be that guy, but you can at least make him effective as a tight end, as a blocker moving forward.
And I don't know if it's blocking so much. I think it might be more. He missed 10 games last year with a hamstring injury. He was never healthy. Is it more of this guy's elite, but is he going to be healthy or not?
That's a fair assessment as well. Obviously, got injured in training camp, got back in after it was week 10. I want to say that he finally, or week 6, if I remember right.
Yep. Yeah.
Week 6, and then back out by week 10, if I remember right. So, it was rough.
One last thing on Dulcich here, because you brought it up just right there, Keith. Dulcich was injured, obviously, with the hamstring. One of the first games we saw him come back, he played primarily in the slot with KJ Hamler lined up next to him. And that was in London with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually wrote an article on this on milehighhuddle.com. I have to do some Google searching to find it, but it was a film breakdown and identifying how the Broncos were actually using Greg Dulcich in conjunction with KJ Hamler, because the hyperactive speed threat that you have with both of those guys stretching the field vertically, then you have one go and the other one break off, the other one go, the other one break off, or you switch release them. So meaning you got one guy in the slot, one guy on the outside, and then when you release off the line of scrimmage, they're both going in opposite directions to switch the flow of the defense, and you switch release them and then have them break opposite ways, putting the safety in conflict on that side. So the Broncos did a really good job of that in London, and Greg Dulcich caught a huge touchdown pass down the right sideline in that game. So you can find that. I also know Nick Kosmider at The Athletic wrote a very similar article to that as well, highlighting the exact same play that I'm talking about. So that might be a very big role, especially with Marvin Mims. So maybe they do utilize, Greg Dulcich in the slot with Marvin Mims next to him, identify that switch release, and then try to find some open space with the two of those guys working over the field and working vertically down the field.
Interesting. I'll just want to ask one thing, Lance. It seems like you have Albert O on the mind. Is there anything you need to say about Albert O, since we're in this tight end room talk as it is? It seemed like about 3 times you went to go say Dulcich and Albert O almost came out your mouth.
Well, I'm here with Mile High Huddle royalty here and our good friend Albert Knoppers, so I keep going in that direction as well. But, gotcha. But no, Albert O's out. Albert O's out. Like Manhertz bringing in, you bring in Manhertz, you bring in Adam Troutman, and you still have Greg Dulcich on the roster. Albert O needs to show that he can actually belong on an NFL roster, or he's not going to be on an NFL roster. Plain and simple.
Wow. Very good, man.
So I have one thing when you were talking Sutton, this is why a post June 1 trade, I mean, you could still see it's 3.8 dead cap, but you say 14 million.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's plenty of time after June 1.
Yep. That June 1 date is huge for him.
No need to rush things with Sutton. I mean, at this point, I think Denver would take a 6 or a 7 just to save the cap hit.
There might be some truth in that.
Especially with the depth.
If someone's willing to pick up that contract, that's the biggest thing.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah, and that's what I want to bring this up. That's part of the reason that I brought up that 5th-year option on Jerry Jeudy. That $13 million that he's getting paid isn't much different than the money that Tim Patrick is getting paid, not much different than the money that Cortland Sutton is getting paid. Jerry Jeudy really didn't come on until the last 5 games of this last year. I think it's a little bit of a gamble, even though we were all talking about Kareem Jackson and maybe that being the lesser, the one that surprised you more out of those 2 signings, I guess you could say. Jerry Jeudy is a little bit surprising. They are putting a lot of risk or a lot of eggs in that basket, saying, we do believe in you. We saw those 5 games. We're putting it on you right now. Not much different than they did with Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick at the time, getting in front of the big deals that were going to be happening for wide receivers, locking them into these contracts. And now we have, many people saying Courtland Sutton isn't living up to it. Courtland Sutton we need to move on from. It's kind of funny that Tim Patrick doesn't get nearly as much of that talk, even though numbers don't seem to be all that different in between the two. So,
the reason I think go ahead.
I guess. Sorry, I know we're bouncing around all over the place. I'm
no,
sorry
we are. It's all good, man.
I guess my big question, and it's pretty obvious here: what receiver out of the 3 of Sutton, Jeudy, and Hamler are they most likely to move on from that also has value? Because the Broncos, they extended that 5th-year option on Jeudy. Patrick is coming off of a torn ACL, and nobody knows what he is. It's a pretty simple, exactly, yeah. And Hamler's hurt. They went and invested in another wide receiver in Marvin Mims. Like all signs, again, that neon sign flashing in my face says Courtland Sutton is the guy to move on from if you're going to do something like that. I made this point on Dove Valley Deep Divers multiple different times. Why would you move on from the most proven wide receiver you have on the roster right now? That's actually healthy. Like we can all argue about the drops that Courtland Sutton had this last season, and the struggles that he's had over the last couple of seasons coming off that torn ACL of his own. But Jerry Jeudy, outside of 5 games this last year, has been very inconsistent. Tim Patrick's hurt. KJ Hamler's hurt. We don't know what Marvin Mims is at the NFL level. Brandon Johnson is an undrafted free agent that showed well. Jalen Virgil has 2 career catches, one of which he took for 70 yards and a touchdown. And then there's Montrell Washington and Kendall Hinton.
Yeah.
The most proven wide receiver you have on this roster is Courtland Sutton. So why would you move on from that right now?
Makes good sense unless you're, like you said, well, yeah, it's cap hit, but I still think that you need to have talent on the field until you're proven otherwise. If you get into a few of these games and you start seeing some of these guys show out, you see the Jeudy show out, you see the Patricks come around, Callaway's maybe putting in some great work. Maybe you feel good enough, or maybe your team's not good enough, and you decide you can move on from Courtland Sutton at that point. But until then, you do need to have a little bit of talent on that wide receiver end. I know where Jody's going to go with this. This is going to be a different scheme, and tight ends are going to take precedence. But Jeudy, go ahead, buddy.
No, but the reason I think the Jeudy 5th-year option made tons of sense is at the end of this year, I can see both Patrick and Sutton both off of this roster because of their deals.
Yes.
So you're losing 2. Hamler, he may be gone. Martell Washington may be gone.
Yep. Starting to get thin all of a sudden.
You needed a guy. You needed a proven guy here.
Yeah. Need a number one contract.
The big reason is Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton really are getting overpaid for what they produced. Really,
Courtland Sutton is not our reliable receiver anymore because one, he doesn't have the spirit anymore. He doesn't want to fight for the balls anymore. He doesn't run for the balls. He catches that would 70-20 or 70-30 in difficulty he would have. Now it's the opposite side, 30-70, and even the 30% he misses. So Courtland Sutton is not that safe anymore. And what about injuries? I think we will see way less injuries again because the coaching staff has upgraded. We have a complete new strength and conditioning coaching, and I think we will see less injuries this year. I hope that we get instead of having 21 on the injury list. That's what we ended up with. I don't think we'll see that.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see a big change. We have to. We were one of the worst in the league as far as injuries. I'm certainly expecting it. Michael Ronquillo says, let's see what this wide receiver group can do under Sean Payton's offense. And I think that speaks volumes, almost getting back to what Lance was talking about as far as the biggest changes we saw in the offseason. Hey, this coaching change is going to pay dividends. I think I'm so excited to see what hits the field, the innovation that Sean Payton has. I'm not expecting, we all go back and we look at, maybe 2020 footage, 2021 footage, the times when he was still in the league, still coaching, his last little stint. He's an innovator. I'm not expecting it to be the exact same thing that he put on the field with the New Orleans Saints. This guy is fantastic, and I can't wait to see what he draws up, how he puts these pieces of the puzzle together. Victor also coming in and saying he has proven to once be a good wide receiver, but has been inconsistent the last few seasons. We would free up cap space and possibly get a pick or two for trading him. The benefits outweigh the costs to keep him when we just drafted Mims. Yeah, it's looking like a whole nother new wide receiver room. We talked about a little bit at the top of the show some of those names that are coming back. It's tough, Broncos country. Yes, we want Latavius Murray back. Kareem Jackson comes back. We have all these names. Some people were really tied to maybe a Dalton Reisner, the Colorado kid. We need to progress. We need to go forward. We will see some of these names move on, and we will become a completely different team, a winning team, I believe, under Sean Payton, George Payton, and the new ownership group. But that might mean getting rid of guys like Courtland Sutton, might be getting rid of names like Tim Patrick, and that hurts sometimes because we do love our Broncos, but it's just the way the game goes sometimes. So, gentlemen, we are way long. Like I said, we try to keep it under an hour. We're going to have to probably shift a few of the topics that we had in our ad to another day. I do want to thank Lance, and I want to give you a little bit of time to talk about everything that you have going on over at Mile High Huddle, over at Dove Valley Deep Divers. Got that right. And just let us know what maybe you even have coming down the pipe as well, man.
Yeah. So first things first, thank you guys all for having me. It's always fun to be able to come on and talk football, no matter with like who it is. And with Denver Bronco Roundup, obviously with Keith and with Albert, Jeudy, you guys are all big on our show over on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Obviously, Michael Cleo jumping in here. Great show tonight. Keith, Jeudy, Albert, Lance, go Broncos. Thank you, Michael, for your continued support here and over at the Mile High Huddle Podcast Network. But guys, follow me on Twitter at LanceS_MHH. I have an article fresh up earlier today. 3 free agents to fill the remaining roster needs that the Broncos have right now. Go check that out. We kind of broke that down a little bit earlier. Coming up, though, I have film breakdowns. That's something I like to do every single season, is do film breakdowns of the draft prospects. So I'll be doing all 5 draft prospects. I try to do Adam Troutman. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to him or not. And then I got a handful of guys that I really like in this undrafted free agency pool, including Thomas Incoom, the edge defender from Central Michigan, and PJ Mustafer, a nose tackle from Penn State. So look forward to those coming, probably one a week over the next couple of weeks. After that, I'll be breaking down the Broncos roster, doing whatever I can in terms of analysis and stuff like that. And then, as always, guys, find me on every Friday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, Dove Valley Deep Divers Podcast. You can find it on Mile High Huddle's YouTube page. You'll go to YouTube, search Mile High Huddle. You'll find us live every single night. Friday nights for me at 6 p.m. And then anywhere you guys get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, like Mile High Huddle's content, any articles you see from those guys, it really helps us out. And we try to do a really good job keeping up with all the Broncos news. Anything you guys can find in terms of Broncos news at Mile High Huddle on Twitter, Mile High Huddle's Facebook page. Go find all of that stuff, guys. You can find all of my work, everybody from Chad, Zach, Nick, Luke, Carl, Scott, Eric, my co-host on Dove Valley Deep Divers, our great litany of personalities, all of our great content. You can find it at milehighhuddle.com, or if you go to si.com/Broncos, you'll be able to find all that as well.
Dang, listen to that, man. The guy is busy. You got a ton going on over there, and it's all great stuff, man. I don't care if it's the podcast, if you're checking out the articles that those guys are putting out. You guys do a fantastic job over there. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on our show, especially with everything that you got going on. And 100%, go check them out. Like, share, subscribe to those Mile High Huddle guys, to the Dove Valley Deep Divers. You guys knock it out of the park. I think you and Eric, probably the 2 highest knowledgeable guys on MHH over there. I mean, you guys Deep Dive is a great way is a great title for your show, because you guys do go deep. I really appreciate what you guys bring in those articles as well. Thanks, Lance, so much for being on here, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, as always, guys, we are the Denver Bronco Roundup. You can check us out. Go over to facebook.com/Denver Bronco Roundup. Of course, we're brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. Go to facebook.com groups and check out Rocky Mountain Sports Network there. A lot of new articles coming up, and a lot more podcasts coming down the pike is for them. And of course, last but not least, again, our sponsor, willowseasonings.com, promo code DBR 2023 if you go to willowseasonings.com. Spice up your life, and hey, help out a family in need as well. Albert and Jeudy, get your final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here. Jeudy, what are you thinking, buddy? Anything you got to say to the Denver Broncos, Denver Bronco fans and DBR fans out there, bud?
Just excited to see what happens in the coming month, post June 1. And little off topic, but go Nuggets tonight.
Yeah.
Really like to see them take a 3-2 lead in this series. I mean, they've lost a couple of games that they should have won.
Well said, buddy. Well said. Go Nuggets. Obviously, go Rockies, and go Avs when they're out there. Sorry to hear about Landeskog as well. But, Dutchie, final thoughts.
Yeah, I have to give some kudos to Lance. He provided me with a spreadsheet of all the draft players, and that has helped me tremendously with my research. So thank you, Lance, for that. And indeed, with Willow Seasoning, you only lose if you don't have any or if you run out. So keep it up, Willow Seasonings.
Yeah,
and go
absolutely.
Broncos.
And go Broncos, absolutely. Willowseasonings.com. Yeah, I love that. You only lose if your cupboard's bare. Check out willowseasonings.com. Again, guys, they're award-winning, blue ribbon-winning. Thank you, guys. Thanks to everybody who jumped in the comments. Kurt and Kenny, Michael Ronquillo. We had Victor in there. We had Michelle early in the show as well. But honestly, guys, we do this for you. We appreciate you. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be here. I mean, we all love the Broncos, and we'd all love to get together and talk in some just little private little chat room. But this is all about you guys, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you for your support. Go over to Denver Bronco Roundup. Like, share, and subscribe to that as well. Of course, we're on here every Tuesday, typically 6:30 or 7 o'clock. So be watching for exactly that time that we'll be hitting you next week. But until then, guys, thank you guys all so much. Appreciate you jumping in here, Jeudy, Albert, and of course, Lance. Appreciate you jumping on the show and being part as well. Until next week, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thank you so much. Have a great night.